7, report from the Strategic Planning Commission. We have with us this evening. Well, we'll let Joe Don introduce Kelly.
We've got Kelly Parker.
Well, I'm going to be somewhat brief. I gave you guys some information, should be in front of you, so you can read through that. You guys are aware we initiated the strategic planning process in August last year. We've had a number of weekly meetings since that time. We just wrapped up 6 months of this process, and we're at a point where we are needing some input from the council as to what direction you'd like us to proceed in. I'll tell you, we've kind of some of the things that we've done over the past 6 months is when we started out and really got a feel for what everybody's initial thoughts were as far as the priorities for our city to be addressing. And we've taken that and reached out to the various stakeholder groups within the community, and for the last few months we've been hearing their stories and as well as their what their individual plans are and what they'd like to see for our community. With that, or in between all that, and towards the end of hearing from our stakeholders, we did I feel like probably a pretty representative community survey. We had, between the people on our committee and the people in the community that responded, over 100 people turning surveys. And you can see in the papers I gave you, there's one page that has the actual numbers, just the survey results, as well as respondent information. What's not included in this respondent information is the results from our committee members when they took the survey. But I'll tell you, with very minor exception, the committee's findings were right in line with those of the community. And if anybody wanted to see the discrepancies there, I could pull that up for you. Not tonight, but at some point. I don't think it's going to surprise anybody that when you look at what the priorities are for our community, based on the survey results, is that the roads, water, and sewer lines are important. It was the highest ranking issue or priority from our surveys. It is also directly the responsibility of the municipality to take care of those items. We did go through a process of, as we identified these priorities, to also kind of come to a consensus as to who the group felt would be responsible for these. And when you look at these two sheets of paper, they look almost exactly the same, except one says responsibility rankings and one says priority rankings. The responsibility ranking is kind of how we determined that who was responsible for what. I guess moving forward, we see we haven't fleshed everything out where we got 100% consensus on everything, and that may never be possible. But we didn't want to get into a lot of spirited discussions about very specific objectives or strategies for our city to be taking on without knowing first what you expected of us. Because we know that a lot of the things that we saw, and Joe Don mentioned it in his report with the accounting and budgeting process, whatever act that was he referenced, but these are things that you as a council are taking care of, that had we put a strategy together and presented that to the council, that would have been one of the things that we put in there, more than likely. So there are things that we know that are going to come out of the strategic planning process, or potentially come out of the strategic planning process, that you guys are already taking care of. I think we're at the point where we just need council more involved in the process, whether through the committee structures or and maybe it's time for the council to just take this information and run with it. We don't know what the council would like the committee to do from this point forward, and that's we'd like to answer any questions. We know that you're just seeing this for the first time this evening. Some of you, Scott and Wes Joe Don and the mayor have been involved in our process since the beginning. So, I mean, it's not completely foreign to the council, but we would like direction. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have over what put in front of you or otherwise.
Well, certainly, I'd like to publicly thank you and the other committee members for their hard work on this project. And as you said, although it's not a revelation that roads, water, and sewer lines are the main priority for this community, looking at the other priorities, certainly we have our work ahead of us cut out. Residential development. You know, we have a lot of transient workers. What we need is housing so that they'll bring their families here to stay with us. Looking at the labor force. You might speak about that a little bit.
And I'll just say it again, that some of these items, there was a consensus within our group as to who should be doing what. When you talk about residential development, on one hand, we had, you know, pretty good consensus that that's something that the private sector should take care of. When you look at industrial development, it was pretty good consensus that that's a working combination between the municipal government and the private sector working together to come to, you know, whatever solutions we need in regard to industrial development. You get to items like retail development, things like that. That one in particular, there's not much consensus there. There's a group that strongly contends that the city should keep their nose out of it, and there's a group that contends that there should be a combination of efforts. I think, you know, largely when it gets right down to it, there's a big debate over the word that everybody begins debating is incentives. That's where the big debate is incentives. I think there is consensus that there needs to be partnerships in retail development between the city and the private sector. The incentives, on the other hand, where there's a big gap in belief system. Same token, everybody in our committee is very aware of the impact that sales tax revenue has on the fiscal operations of the city. So you can't have a total disconnect between any of these items on this survey, even though some of them may not be directly part of a city strategic plan.
And for example, things that you might not think are related actually are. A stoplight at 281 and 64. If we have retail customers coming from the north and they can't turn east to go out to Walmart, that's a factor in whether or not they'll come back and shop here. Of course, we hope there'll always be a corridor downtown on Slane Avenue, but some of these things we have discovered are related that we thought were not. So it's all tied together, isn't it?
I'd like to add that, there are a number of folks who have committed nearly every single week since August to attend a meeting that has been anywhere from an hour up to 2 hours in length in going over and hearing from, as Kelly said, the stakeholders, our school systems, K through 12, through university, through career tech, hearing from the retail sector, hearing from the oil and gas sector, hearing from our public services entities.
County commissioners.
County commissioners, other state government, listening to several different things. And I think for myself, in being in that committee, part of what, when we set out, part of the concept was that we as council get asked to make decisions. And sometimes one meeting we're making a decision based on what we think at that particular point in time, and then 3 months later we're revisiting the same decision that we already made and we're looking at it from a different view. Well, how effective is the decision making if we're not guided toward a common direction for our city as a whole? And I think that that's a lot of what we were trying to come up with and looking at in terms of prioritizing what are the needs of our city and how does the city adopt a vision toward developing all of those priority areas and taking care of and addressing those priorities rather than just, and I've said it a million times, somebody calls in, says we need a stop sign at this corner, 3 guys, just happen to be elected officials, decide whether or not we're going to have a stop sign on that corner. Well, that's not real effective, and that's not very efficient, at least in Scott Brown's mind. Now, I get to partake in that, making that decision, but it'd be nice if we had a map guiding us in our decisions as we meet as committee members and as we meet as council members. So my hope is that we find some way to look at these priorities, look at the standing and existing committees, and seek from them, how do we advance strategies and goals and objectives around this idea to get something effective that will last for the city of Ballard. That's Scott Brown's.
And I think, and it was very evident early on, is that, and it wasn't a matter of, we talked about the accounting system and the State Budget Act or whatever. There's a lot of, I guess, the archaic system that you guys are currently operating under. I don't call it archaic. You don't have to call it archaic. But it doesn't lend itself to easy transparency. It's hard to ask the city manager a question about finances and really nail down and drill down on some things where we can, get answers. From what we've learned through this process, it's a system issue that we hope will be taken care of, and we hope not only to fiscal responsibility was way up there on things that people wanted to see, occur for the city. And it wasn't necessarily from a standpoint that they think that you're doing a bad job managing what you have. That's not the case at all. It was more from the standpoint they want to be more aware of what's going on. They want decisions that have dollars tied to them to be based on a priority list and a plan. So that, when something comes up, you don't have to, at least the way we felt, we don't want you to have to make off-the-cuff decisions just because it gets, thrown at you all of a sudden without some guidance as to what the priorities that your citizens feel are important. And, from that standpoint, we didn't feel like we could put together a meaningful, full-fledged strategic plan without, knowing that there's a lot of things that the committees are doing that we're not in the loop on. There's a lot of things the Finance Committee knows for the city that we don't as citizens fully understand. And as a committee of citizens, I guess that's where we're at tonight. We're coming back in front of you. This is what we've got to so far. This is what we need moving forward, or you tell us what you want us to do.
Any questions or comments of Kelly? I'd like to say, too, that health and wellness is an important part of strategic planning, and we have with us this evening Leanne Least and Kathy Ferris from the Woods County Coalition on Healthy Living. And could you tell us a little bit about the strategic plan that committee's been working on?
Well, we've been also attending the city strategic planning committees, and the Woods County Coalition is working towards working with the city on doing Alva as a healthy city, trying to get a grant for that and have that money go towards parks. We're working, we have three committees. One is obesity and nutrition, one is substance abuse and risk-taking behaviors in our youth, and the other one is daycare / after-school projects / parent, our 3 major committees. So, and I feel like being on both these committees has been very, very helpful because then I get to hear things from both sides. The Woods County Coalition is growing. We are becoming more and more involved. Our committees are very active. We're getting ready to go into a fundraising phase so we can start implementing some of our plans, which are to continue fresh fruits and vegetables, to the boxes that are put out by the food pantry, to hopefully fill up some after-school projects, to continue with the 24/7 smoke-free cities, schools. We've got multiple things that are in the works right now that's leading towards healthy communities. I will say, by being on the city strategic planning committee, I learned a tremendous amount from the stakeholders. Helped learn a bigger picture, learn how active, not only as a city, but the county is. The county's very active and the city's very active, and they don't always work together as a partnership, but yet we have so many things tangled together. Industrial parks and everything like that where things are tangled together. I really would like to see the council give us some guidance at this point, maybe through committee meeting with us, help give us some guidance, tell us what you've done, where you're at, what you're looking for, so we can include that in the strategic plan if you want us to do that. We're a group of about 20 people, and we dedicated a lot of time into this and did a lot of educating ourselves, and we want to step forward and help the council in doing a strategic plan for the city. Personally, I'm thinking 5 to 15 years, minimum. I don't know what other people are thinking, but to give you guys some guidance from the community.
What a good job for being on the spot. Didn't she do a good job, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Anything else we need to discuss as far as this agenda?